Yeah, you got a sense of what's coming, Jack?
I didn't listen much, so now.
So we're starting.
Okay.
Jack Becker here.
Yep.
And, you know, I got this connection through Bruce Hartman.
Yes, from Kansas City.
Yeah, and Bruce is like, oh, you'll love Jack. He goes, he's such a nice, interesting man.
Good, good, good. Let's see what he has to say.
So how about that for a build-up?
Okay, we'll take that as what we can get.
So I do appreciate you taking the time.
happy to be here.
We haven't ever met, but
Yeah.
you know, one of the things I'm just so interested in is people that donate their life to art. And that's exactly what you've done. So, and I know you have an interesting story, and yeah, he raises that. But you do, right? I mean, yeah, you grew up in Minnesota?
Yes,
is that
I
right?
did. Grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah, where in Minnesota did you go?
Mostly a place called Winona in the southeast corner
In the southeast corner.
of Mississippi.
Yeah, and so was it a family of people that were interested in art, or were you the outlier?
No, I think I must have been the outlier. I mean, I went to the Minneapolis Institute of Art a couple times as a child. I remember those distinct memories as a young child and in high school. So it was not my intent to study art history when I went to college.
Yeah, what were you interested in?
I thought I probably would study history and go to law school.
Oh, interesting. And what did your dad and mom do?
They had a couple businesses. They were, from the Midwest. They had done, moderately well.
Right.
Had a couple businesses, and yeah.
Right, and so here you are. You go, okay, law that's safe, right?
Safe, interesting.
Yeah, and so and you went to school in
I went to a place called Carleton College in Minnesota, and ended up studying art history. Decided that kind of my freshman year that I would go down that path.
And did you try doing art? Any kind of?
No, I mean, I did. We had to do I did printmaking at college. We had to take a couple studio classes, but that was it.
Yeah, but you know, I look around and I've had a view of the museum and seen some of the things that you've done.
I'm glad you got to see the new Hawks edition.
Yes, I did. You know, I did. We saw all of it, in fact.
Good.
And I can get a sense of creativity that you have just from the place that you make art, right? You have the component where you make art.
Yeah.
And they said that was your idea to do that.
Well, I don't know if exactly my idea, but there has been, are you talking about Artworks right out here? Yeah, Artworks was something that I did sort of have that idea and worked with education department and stakeholders here to kind of create that hands-on space. This is also an institution that opened in 1931 with a classroom or studio space, so that sort of commitment to education, art making has always been part of our DNA.
Yes.
So I think we build upon those kinds of traditions.
Yes, but to do that requires creativity to think about those terms.
Yeah.
So I want to go back and say you're back to college. You're in printmaking.
Yes.
So things are clicking. Something's clicking that you go, art is really the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I had a chance as an undergraduate to intern two institutions in New York City, one of them being the Whitney Museum of American Art, another one being a place called Franklin Furnace, which no longer exists.
Yeah.
So as a 20-year-old, I had that sort of entree intern at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. I worked at the local gallery on campus. So I sort of, had opportunities as an undergraduate to kind of test the waters and pursue.
Yeah, but you're seeking those out. You don't just get the Whitney.
No,
right?
No, yes.
I mean,
yeah.
You're doing something right to get
I'm doing
that.
something. I don't know if it's right or not, but I'm doing something.
And what was that? Do you know?
No, I think I was just, I was lucky in many ways. I had a friend from college whose parents were going to be gone for the summer, so I had a place to stay. And so things just sort of opened up and took advantage of those opportunities. Yeah.
And so you're 20 years old. You grew up in Minnesota.
Grew up in Minnesota.
And you're now in New York City at the Whitney.
Yes.
So what was, that's a big turning point, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think I spent that summer. I lived with someone whose parents were, whose mother was a very big collector, who was very involved with the museum. I shouldn't say which one, but had founded a museum and bought American paintings. There was a Stuart Davis above my bed and an Alex Katz painting. So it was kind of, it was a great environment. And I worked at the Whitney and I got to sort of see a little bit of behind the scenes. And then, Franklin Furnace was a very different kind of institution. It was an artist-run organization. It was located in Tribeca. And there were sort of two contrasting views of the art world in New York in the 1980s.
Yes, so when you're doing that, your mind's still spinning. You probably don't know exactly what you're going to do at that age, right?
No, no. I mean, but I began to be interested in museum work at some point, more interested in art history, and then, the museum work followed, especially after graduating from college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're do the summer, and you're what, like
I'm
junior?
between sophomore and junior year.
All right, that's a critical, that's a big component. And you have did you know who Stuart Davies and Alec Katz were?
No,
So, okay, so you had knowledge. See, I wouldn't have known at 19 who those people were at all. Did you go, oh my God?
Yeah, I took an American art class, so I was prepared.
Yeah, so you knew, and the whole home had beautiful art.
Yeah.
So you go, you're thinking this is something, but I'm always interested in trying to figure out how that road happens.
How that road happens. I can sort of quickly tell you the road. I know, so another summer I worked at the Minneapolis Institute of Art and the Department of European Painting for a summer. And then after college, I did things like I went to Alaska for the summer and worked in the fish factories.
Okay, let's stop there. That's interesting. That's very, you blow over it, but.
No, it's not that interesting. But no, I took a summer. There were just a handful of us who were friends. We decided we wanted to do something after graduating from college. So we went to Alaska and were there for the summer, sort of working.
Cleaning fish?
Cleaning
Canning
fish.
it?
Yeah.
Fishing? Were you fishing?
Cleaning fish, like in a fish, like in a processing plant.
Yeah, so it probably played really well.
Yeah, and we lived in tents.
Yeah.
So
what did you learn from that?
What did I learn? I learned about working with a variety of people. I learned about being outside. I learned about self-sufficiency.
Yes.
I mean, we hitchhiked. We lived in a tent. I think it was sort of a great adventure.
Absolutely.
So, but from there, I had a chance. I went to Minneapolis, and I had a chance to work in a commercial gallery for a little while.
And what did they sell?
That's a good question. They sort of sold contemporary things. They had some historic Minnesota things from the early part of the 20th century, mostly contemporary. They sort of had an art leasing program. So a lot of sort of corporate kinds of things. Interesting. Not that interesting, but interesting enough. At a certain point, I was able to secure a paid internship at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, in the Department of Decorative Arts and Sculpture. And that was a great catalyst for about a year or so. And and from there, I went to graduate school after that.
And so at that point, you've done fish. You've worked at the fish factory. But that did teach you a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
It probably also taught you, this is a hard job. I may not want to do something
like this. Yeah.
Yes. And then you get this paid internship.
Yep.
That's your first paid art gig, probably.
Probably
no, I guess.
Gallery.
The gallery, and then the first museum paid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so just have your undergraduate at this?
23, 24, something like that.
And so now it's, okay, let's take it up a notch and go and that's where we go from there.
That's where we go from there.
Yeah, and so where do you go from at that point?
I go to the University of Delaware.
Okay.
I just recommended by professors. I've never been to Delaware, but it so happens that it's a strong program in American art. It's connected to Winterthur.
Yes.
Connected to a conservation program, and it was a good fit. So that I was there for my master's and stayed on for my PhD.
Did you know Michael Ettema by any chance?
No.
He's from Minnesota and went to Winterthur and got a degree there.
What's the last name again?
Ettema.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He worked for me as my gallery director. He was a museum director for many times, and he got tired about that and worked for me as a gallery.
Interesting. Yeah.
And he was wonderful. Michael, we love you. And he does art appraisals now. But yes, he was there at about that same time.
Okay.
He's about the same age as you are.
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that name up.
No, you never know.
And he had a great time. I mean, he learned a lot. He loved that whole environment and was very didactic. So,
I mean, I ended up pursuing the study of American art, and then I sort of did a minor in American decorative arts at Winterthur. So I was sort of focused on American painting, American decorative arts, and that was kind of my focus during my master's and PhD.
And so you got master's and PhD there.
Yes, I did.
Is that a 3 or 4 year?
It's a long time. That's a good question. I think the master's was 2 years of classwork. PhD is about 2 years of classwork, and then writing the dissertation.
Yeah, so 5 years.
Yeah, dissertation took a little bit longer, but it got done.
And what was the dissertation on?
American tonalism, sort of late 19th century, early 20th century American painting. George Inness,
Yeah.
a group of other artists kind of working in a sort of a muted Barbizon kind of approach to American landscape painting, 1890, 1915.
Yes. And what was that captivated you want to do a dissertation? That's a lot of investigation.
Good question. I think I felt like it was underexplored. I had an interest in landscape painting. I was interested in the late 19th, early 20th century and the role of industrialization and the way that urban culture thought about nature and the landscape. And I just sort of found my way toward that topic. I think a great scholar named Wanda Korn had written a great book about that subject. I was sort of inspired by her work. And I just sort of found my way into that topic.
So tonalism, industrialization.
Yeah,
turn of the
collecting
century.
American art, 1900, these kinds of things were I was interested in.
And you spent basically 2 of those years, probably, or 3, focused on that area.
Yeah, I was in Washington, D.C. I had a fellowship supported by the Luce Foundation through the University of Delaware. I also had a lecturing fellowship at the National Gallery, and then I had Smithsonian pre-doctoral fellowship. So that allowed me to conduct research and begin the writing for a couple of years.
Yeah, and how does one do that? I mean, I don't actually know how one does that.
I'm not really sure. I think you just sort of do it.
Yeah.
There's no magic course about how to write a dissertation, but it just happens.
Yeah, I mean, so you have to look at a lot of art.
Look at a lot of art, look at all the archives, and pursue a topic. It's a little bit solitary, but it's an interesting. It's just like writing a big paper. That's all it is.
I mean, I've written a book on Maynard Dixon.
I've seen that you've written a book on Maynard
I haven't
Dixon.
done a dissertation.
And I think you've written some other books as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
So.
but I haven't done a dissertation.
Same idea.
Yeah, same kind of thing. For me, for Dixon, the paintings were incredibly important to understand and to know, but really to get to the bones of understanding, it's the literature and the history, not only his history, but world history and American history.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's exactly similar for...
Yeah, I was very interested in the ideas around collecting at that time and why certain individuals were drawn to these sort of landscapes. Less interested in a specific artist than I was in understanding the context for this notion of this rather conservative approach to painting that really fell out of favor because it was so conservative. And just understanding collectors, I looked at men's clubs like the Lotus Club and how they had programs around art and what did that mean for the art market in New York at that time, what did that mean for institutions as well, and just understanding exhibitions, artists, and collectors at that sort of juncture.
And was that component really important to pushing tonalism? These art clubs and men's clubs?
Yeah, no, it was. It really was. There were a handful of collectors. A man named William T. Evans, who was perhaps the largest collector of American art in 1900.
Right.
He helped found the Smithsonian American Art Museum. He also donated a bunch of pictures to the Montclair Art Museum. A man named George Hearn, who was involved with the Metropolitan. They sort of have a predisposition for works by George Inness, Homer Dodge Martin, Alexander Wyant, and a kind of a younger generation of painters.
And you think this is still contemporary today in a different way, maybe?
Possibly. I think the world is perhaps more complex today. I don't know. I mean, I looked at a little chapter in a part of New York City at a certain time, and it was sort of easy to unravel.
Right.
It might be a little bit harder to unravel today.
But it seems like it makes sense,
it
right?
makes sense, yeah.
I mean, same place,
same ideas.
same descendants to some extent.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting. I mean, it seems like what you wrote then has great bearing today.
Possibly. I hadn't really thought about that. But yes, I mean, who's collectors, dealers, artists responding to the moment. Yeah.
Right, and who's making the push and what happens, because we're all influenced by that. You can't help but be that way.
It's true.
And can they is the dissertation something that's available?
Oh, I hope not.
Okay.
I'm sure it's still out there somewhere.
Somewhere is. But I mean, I know I have people who've said that, I don't want my dissertation out there. But the reality is that could be very pertinent to something.
Yeah, it could be.
You know, because I find that interesting. That was the component of the thing that you really focused on, was it's not so much the art. Yes, that's important, but it's the cultural concepts
around it.
that are around it.
Yeah.
So you get this dissertation. Now you're a
right.
doctor. And what are you thinking you're going to do at that point?
So along the way, before I actually finished the dissertation, I got a job, and I went to the Florence Griswold Museum in Old Lyme, Connecticut.
Okay.
And I was there for about 5.5, 6 years as the curator of American art.
And what did they have what was the main curation?
So the Florence Griswold Museum was the site of an American Impressionist art colony. Charles Hassan, Millard Metcalf,
Wonderful.
artists like Henry Ward Ranger and others worked there.
Yes.
So it's in a historic site spread over about, I think today, about 7 or 8 acres, with a new gallery and education center. And it was sort of an opportunity just to be a curator, and it sort of dovetailed with some of my own interests at that time.
And what were those interests?
I was interested in sort of that notion of, some of the tonalist painters worked there, so there was a connection to that topic. It was a great sort of small museum that allowed me to do different kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. We just keep going.
This is what
I love on a podcast. It doesn't matter. Phone can call,
I think
lights go out.
you can wave your hands and lights might pop up back there.
So you're working for 5 or 6 years at this as a curator.
At a great institution.
Yeah. And was your mind at that point going, be a curator or director? Did you know?
Oh, yeah. I think there was a certain point that I knew that I wanted to do something that wasn't being a curator.
And why?
I felt like I gravitated towards more institutional, big picture goals. I liked thinking about the role of museums rather than writing a label. I felt like I never wanted to have to write another label again.
Got it.
And I was at an institution at the Florence Griswold Museum that went through sort of an expansion. We built a new gallery, expanded the property, expanded the footprint, expanded the program.
Right.
I found those kinds of strategic conversations more interesting and more relevant, and I felt like I had a skill set that at times aligned with those kinds of things.
Yeah. So you're doing curatorship, but they're having a big expansion, and you're immediately kind of drawn into that component. And do you find yourself like watching what's happening, kind of like you're on a set of a movie, and you're like, oh, I want to actually be the director?
I don't know if I said I so much I'm going to be the director, but I felt like. Yes. I felt like that I would probably move into some kind of other sort of leadership role.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. And you're 32, maybe?
No, I'm in my late 30s. At this point, by the time I leave Connecticut, I'm in my late 30s, I think. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in
my 30s still.
Yeah, you're in your 30s. You leave Connecticut. You have your PhD. You've worked as curator for 5 to 6 years. Mm-hmm. And then what's that next move?
So then the next move is I go to Cheekwood, Cheekwood Botanical Gardens and Museum of Art in Nashville, Tennessee. I go there to be in charge of the museum component. Cheekwood is an interesting institution that is a historic house. It has a museum. It has 55 acres of botanical gardens. And I'm in charge sort of the museum component with a sort of small curatorial staff and small sort of collection staff, et cetera. And I oversee that purview. While I am there, I decided to go back to school to pursue an MBA, and I pursued an MBA at the University of Michigan. There is a leadership change at a certain point in the midst of that program, and I am asked to step in as the interim president and CEO
of that
institution.
I see.
And I eventually stay on in that role for a number of years
before
coming here.
For how long?
I was in Nashville for 8 years. I was probably president for 4 to 5 years.
Okay, 4 to 5 years in Nashville. At the same time, you're getting your MBA from
early
Michigan.
early on, but I finished that quickly.
You're doing it
via travel, et cetera.
Yeah, I was going to say, because internet is not a thing yet, really?
Yeah, no, it's totally It's totally a thing. It's one of these executive programs. You travel back and forth.
Yeah. And why the MBA?
I felt like I wanted to develop a different skill set.
Yeah, that is for sure.
And I felt like it was an opportunity. I received a fellowship, so it was affordable. And I felt like it was just it gave me another set of tools to think about.
Yeah, yeah. Because not many that I know of, they all should have it probably, but have an MBA that also have an arts history and a PhD.
Yeah.
I mean, that sets you in rarefied air.
Well, rarefied, I don't know, but yes, it's
At least at that time, I'm sure
yeah,
it did.
yeah.
Yeah. So you're at the Botanical
Art Museum. Yes,
and
Cheekwood.
Art Museum. Yeah. And you do that for at least 6 years?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there. I think I'm in a leadership for almost 5 years.
Yes.
Maybe,
And then
4.5.
something, you got an opportunity.
Yeah, opportunity to come to Omaha.
And that was 2012?
2010.
10, okay. And what was your role here when you came?
Executive director, CEO.
Okay.
Yeah, same role I have today.
Yeah. And that's a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, and going from hot, humid to cold, humid, hot.
Yes.
Yes. Was that a culture change?
No, I mean, it's not that far from Minnesota. My mother was born in Iowa, across the way, so
it felt comfortable.
I've been to Omaha before. I knew this
Yeah.
institution. I knew a little bit about Nebraska, but I was a Midwesterner, so
Right.
it was an easy transition.
It was easy. Okay,
Yeah.
so you've been here 15 years.
I've been here 15 plus years.
And so from 2010 to 2025, a lot's happened.
A lot has happened at the Joslyn, yes.
Yes. So when you came on, what's that like actually? I mean, just to take over a role as a museum director. It's a big museum, a lot of people that work here.
I think the best thing you could do is listen. You want to talk to people, you want to talk to staff, you want to talk to stakeholders, you want to talk to people in the community and have a sense of the role of the institution,
Right.
its history, its present, the opportunities for the future. And then, it is sort of a leadership by consensus approach to making sure people are heard. And that's the best way to kind of get acclimated, I feel like.
How long did it take to get that sense?
I think it takes a little while. You gotta give yourself, I still learn. I still learn every day after 15 years. But I think that it takes a year to understand, or more.
And you kind of have to understand the players too, don't you? To some
Yeah,
extent?
you have to just understand the community,
Right.
who's there, understand the institution, its history, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, because to grow a museum, which you've clearly done, you've gone through a major expansion in 2022.
2024.
But it started in 2022.
Oh, wait,
right?
so yeah, it started.
So yeah, two years, right?
Yeah, a little bit before that.
Yeah. So
We chose the architect in 2018, so it's been a
it's like
process.
46,000 square feet.
42,000 square foot building.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big undertaking. But you probably couldn't have ever done that when you came immediately.
No, I think not. I think it takes, and there wasn't it takes a while to build the case and to understand whether it's necessary or not. So no, it's not something you could have done in the first year you were here.
Right, and so now you're and I've had the pleasure and joy actually to go through your museum. By the way, I will say, it is a fantastic museum.
Yeah, we think so too.
Yeah, I mean, architecturally.
Yeah, three great buildings.
Native arts that you have and how you've displayed them concurrently with American art, which I think you're one of the cutting edge museums on that. I don't have to tell you because I'm sure you were completely involved. In fact, let's talk about that, about how native arts is along with American art.
Yeah, no, I think that we are sitting right now in the Marge H. Durham Center for Western Studies. This has been a cornerstone of this institution, is our sort of, especially the sort of regional focus on collections of Prince Maximilian, Karl Bodmer, and telling the story of the 19th century.
Right.
So I think as we had an opportunity through the support of the Mellon Foundation and others to bring on inaugural Curator of American Native Art, Curator of Native American Art. And so working as a collaborative team, the curatorial approach was how do we sort of tell the stories of the, really the 19th century. Art collection is kind of 1830 to 1930s, and the American galleries of integrating, what one might think of as American painting, combined with sort of Native American art at the same time. And I think it took I took a lot of thought and leadership on the curatorial team.
I'm sure.
And I think they did a terrific job of highlighting those collections and those stories, those narratives, those objects, and weaving them together in a way that is accessible to a scholar versus a first-time museum visitor.
Yes. I thought one of the most brilliant things your curator did when I did the quick walkthrough was the Thomas Moran Venetian scene next to the Ojibwe, you know, beaded bags, and showing that this is where the beads
come
came
from, yeah.
at that same time, basically. And you know, to me, that was a stroke of genius.
Great.
To see
I
that.
take no credit for that. So.
Yeah, no, I know it was your curator. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, it was like deep thinking. They're thinking about the history, the process, and how those interact. And if one person can go, huh? You know, it just makes a museum what it should be. In my opinion. I think you can't tell, personally, you can't understand art without understanding history.
No, I think the contextualization and, you know, we're not a history museum, we're an art museum. So we foreground the art object and the aesthetic experience. At the same time, how can you create context around things and, you know, different ways.
And you have this brilliant history of the Bodmer collection, which is what, like 300?
I think nearly 400 works.
400 works. You have the Miller collection.
Yeah, Alfred Chicken Miller, it's over 100 works.
Yeah, 120 works or something
like that. Yeah.
I mean, those are two of the major deposits of those types of material. Yet you have Ed Ruscha, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With 20 plus works. And
yeah.
Maybe you could speak to the depth of this collection.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I mean, I think the one thing that we were really excited about is, you know, we closed for this major renovation and, you know, expansion. We were able to sort of remove all the art from the gallery. So the first time in over 90 years, and rethink through installation. I mean, what kind of stories did we want to tell? What kinds of objects that had been in storage did we want to highlight? How did we want to create an experience that was welcoming to visitors of all ages and backgrounds, and that provided, you know, great opportunities to see great works of art? And I think, you know, what you see today is the oldest objects on view are these pre-dynastic Egyptian vases that are made from the mud of the Nile River that are roughly 5,000 years old. So we sort of say that we celebrate 5,000 years of human creativity on view here at the Joslyn Art Museum. And working to kind of find ways to highlight collections and all three of our sort of landmark buildings at the same time, recognizing that those three landmark buildings, each of themselves, are works of art as well.
They are.
Whether the 1931 Memorial Building, one of the great Art Deco buildings in America, the 1994 Scott Pavilion by Norman Foster's first building in America, and the new 2024 Hawks Pavilion designed by Snow Hetta. You know, these are all three sort of amazing objects in themselves, housing incredible collections within them.
And so you have this opportunity. You got 2 years as they build to think. Do you storyboard that out?
Yeah, so I mean, the Curatorial team definitely storyboarded that out, you know, going through revisions. I mean, so, and in every area, you know, thinking through the balcony, which is art of the ancient Mediterranean world, bringing out things, working with an outside scholar to bring out things that hadn't been on view in decades, you know, working through the European galleries, working through the American collections, but very much sort of a collaborative project just to think about paint color, you know, making sure that every text panel is in English and in Spanish, what objects to highlight. But yes, I think, you know, years of preparation to get to that point.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, right? It's a lot of decision making.
And so the curators are doing their thing, their storyboarding, bringing it in. And then what's your role as the director in that?
Just making sure it opens on time.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I mean, in a way, yes.
Staying out of their way to some extent.
Stay out of their way, offer advice when asked, but recognize talent, try to help make sure.
That's a leader. That's what a leader
does. Try to make sure it gets done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the new expansion is very interesting because the skylights, how they have that filtered light that comes through, it's like an eco-friendly type expansion, right? Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about it. So we were really pleased that in the decision to choose Snow Hetta as our architectural partner, along with Ellie Pointer Mercado Architects of Record here in Omaha. A great collaborative team that we feel like really sort of struck a great note. Craig Diker, the principal architect, always has talked about how he's been to this institution before and long admired these buildings. So he talks much more eloquently than I can about how the 1931 building, this sort of great Art Deco building, kind of grows out of the earth like a chimney rock against the plains in western Nebraska. It has sort of an organic, rock-like quality. How the Norman Foster building sits like a perfect rectangle on a plane, like a sort of architectural moment on on a plane. And how this third building, the hope was that how it would kind of lift a little bit to be almost like a cloud against the Nebraska sky. I mean, the first floor is open, it's glassy, it's you can see all the way through, and then the galleries are up above as they are in the other buildings as well, to kind of create a new focal point, a more visitor-friendly access point to enter into the institution, and then how all three buildings sort of come together for this sort of great architectural moment, as well as a moment for visitors to sort of easily navigate where they might go and to explore.
Yeah, and this is a free museum.
Yeah, Sarah Joslyn intended the museum to be free. When she opened in 1931, the museum began to charge admission in the 1960s. When I arrived in 2010, the museum had been free on Saturday mornings for over a decade, between 10 and 12, and 46% of our attendance was on Saturday mornings between 10 and 12. Through the generous support of donors in this community, we were able to go to free general admission in maybe 2012 or so, 2011, 2012, and we have remained free ever since.
Yeah, and you've almost going to have 200,000 visitors this year?
We hope so. We think so, yeah.
Yeah. And so if someone comes to the Joslyn, what can they expect the experience to be?
I hope they have a great experience, first of all, but I think they can find, as I said, 5,000 years of human creativity. Yeah, they will find spaces to sit down, both inside and out. There's sort of places, soft spaces, exactly, places to gather and to take a rest. You'll have opportunities to look outdoors, especially in the New Hawks Pavilion.
Yes, I love that.
I think a process of discovery. If you're here for a little while, there's always great programming that it happens at the same time. But hopefully, people will come, if they come for the first time, they realize that there's more to see and come back for a second time.
Yeah, and they can come and make art if they want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's studio spaces, there's artworks, with hands-on space right outside this room. There's great opportunities to explore your own creativity as well.
Yeah, I find it such a unique museum, and I've been to a lot of museums.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, but it is unique in that way. It seems very inviting.
Yeah, and I think community focus. 80% of our attendance comes from Nebraska and Iowa. We are here to serve this region and this community, and I think that that's been very much part of our DNA for a long time. Help spread the word about us.
Yeah, and maybe talk about a couple of the cool pieces you have, like the Galaxy 1947 Pollock.
Yes,
maybe?
exactly, sure. I think the collections here are really sort of outstanding, and you mentioned Jackson Pollock, one of his very first canvases that he painted on as if it was a canvas and then put on the ground and drip paint on it.
Right.
So a very important pivotal work in his own career, a gift from Peggy Guggenheim in 1949. One of his most important pictures is here. And if you think there's a handful of other icons of the 20th century with Frankenthaler and others hanging in those galleries. The recent gift of the Philip G. Schrager collection, which is a transformative gift of artists working in the latter part of the 20th and first few years of the 21st century. A growth of the contemporary collection, which I know you had a chance to walk through.
Yes.
We talked about American and Native American art and the Bodmer and the Max. Also great European paintings, from Titian to Veronese to Rembrandt to Claude Lorraine to Monet. So, I think...
your plaster cast.
To a plaster cast of the Degas, Little Dancer. But yeah, there are really sort of outstanding things in this collection. We always talk about how this is an institution that perhaps might have a larger national footprint than you might expect in the state of Nebraska or Omaha, that we want to punch above our weight in many ways in terms of collections.
And you've been listed as one of the top art museums in America.
Yeah, we're super excited about that.
And so do you try to reach out to get these other, like for me, I came to Omaha to see this museum.
That's great.
And how do you reach those people
That
like
is
me?
a great question. I think that I think we don't have the perfect answer for that, but I think it is opportunities like this, the conversation that you and I are having. I think it's opportunities to, from a scholarly standpoint, to organize exhibitions around Carl Bodmer for
Yes.
a project we had a couple years ago at the Metropolitan Museum in the Amy Carter. I think opportunities to connect with people here in the community far and wide who help spread the word as well. I think we are a key part of the identity of the city of Omaha and the state of Nebraska. So I think anything we can do to strengthen the quality of life in Omaha and in Nebraska helps the Joslyn and helps spread the word of all the opportunity that exists here.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah, and you do loan pieces. You did.
Yeah, exactly.
You have you actually have the keystone for a couple of different collections, for sure. Bodmer and Miller. You know, and
and other things in between.
And Ed Roche for that matter.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, because I do think this is a museum that people need to know about.
I agree.
That everyone should have this on their checklist. If they haven't come here, and I'm saying, if you haven't come to this museum, you are missing one. Yeah. You
just come for the buildings alone, and then there's great art inside
it's
as
true.
well.
The buildings are really interesting and inspirational from 31 till 2024.
Yeah.
I mean, it really has that. For me, going into that 1931 part with where the plants were and all the Art Deco, and you get the sense of what it must have been like. Yeah. This huge.
It's a grand building.
A grand building in 31 in Omaha.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it continues today.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share you think we may have glossed over? Or?
No, I just think that I think that just again, I appreciate your wish to have more people know about this institution, and I think more people know about the great city of Omaha. The institution of the Joslyn is closely intertwined with the history of this city.
Yes.
And I think that this is a city that's welcoming and inviting, that has a sense of prosperity, that is yet an unrecognized place for many people to come to. And I think anything we can do to get people to come to Omaha and see the Joslyn and understand how critical the role of the arts and the institutions like Joslyn and many others are within the fabric of daily life here is a great story to tell here as well as far.
Yeah, I would assume this is one of the biggest components of this city for our draw and everything else.
Yeah. There's a lot of great things to see here in Omaha, and we're one of them. Yeah.
And I would say for my native artists and listeners and stuff, this has a great collection of native art, and it's really displayed beautifully.
Yeah, and I think we have a couple great projects coming up. We're, working on an exhibition of Shanupa Hans-Galuger that will open this fall, and I think, stay tuned for other projects in the years to come as well.
Yeah. All right, Jack. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wasn't that bad, right? No. You walked in going, oh my God. This is what I do on a Monday.
It's all good. Thanks for making the trip, really.
Yeah, no, it was a very important.
So when did you get here?
Last night.
When do you leave, today?
No, we're going to stay around for a few days.
So. What are you going to see?
So we're going to go to Lincoln. We're going to see some of the museums there.
Sheldon.
Yeah,
Great.
I'm actually writing a novel that part of it takes place in Omaha.
Oh,
Omaha
really?
has been calling me for some reason.
That's great.
So I'm going to just go get a sense of the place, of the being, of what the city is like.
Are you going to go to the zoo?
We are going to go to the zoo.
Okay, great. You're one of the great zoos.
Yeah, it says it's one of the greatest. I actually, and I didn't even know about it until I started doing research.
I was going to say, great, go to the zoo.
Yeah, and I'm going to go see where the stockyards were that came in the 1880s, because that's a very important...
Where are you staying?
We are staying at a hotel, which I will not state, close by.
Okay. Okay.
So, but we're having a wonderful time.
And you have a list of recommendations for restaurants and everything?
Not yet.
If I can be helpful, let me know.
That would be great. Okay. All right. I'll let you go. I know you got really busy.
No. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was fun.